I think with us, like our mob being such a diverse people, we had 600 to 700 different language roots around this country before Cookie rocked up here and messed up a real good system, mate. And I think so when I engage with local community, I don't just blow into a community saying, well, I'm Dave Widders, I'm an Aboriginal man, you know, I've got years of experience behind me. I really rely on the third party introduction, building a relationship with local people, even before I enter the community. Spending actual physical time within the community is, to me, I think quite crucial. Because when I've looked at government practices, it's just a real blow in, blow out. Fund the program, see in 3 months, see in 6 months, and see us later sort of thing. So I think for me, the foundation of relationship building is absolutely crucial. I think being an Aboriginal man within New South Wales in particular, 6 degrees of separation, always know someone who knows someone who knows someone. When we start talking, we're related after mob sort of thing. So it's handy when we start to know the families and networks around the state. It makes it a bit of an easier road for our mob to engage with each other. And even though we're culturally diverse as Aboriginal people, I think we have a lot in common, which I love and value. But our language is quite different, our art is quite different, our dances are quite different. Up home we do Macarena and but yeah, the way we engage differently, I think, with different communities, and even the urban, regional and remote differences is pretty crucial about how you go and engage there too. And work with some non-Aboriginal people. The funny ones that I've met are from the Northern Territory, or not from the Northern Territory, those who've been to the Northern Territory for about 3 months. They seem to know everything about Aboriginal Australia. Has anyone met them fellas? They're quite a unique bunch, eh? But yeah, so I have to change the way I have to deal with different groups. So when I go to urban, I'll change the way I dress, the way I communicate, compared to what I might do in different states and territories also. So yeah, honestly, I think a lot of it's based on the foundation of respect. It's been a big part of our culture for thousands of years, and it's a very crucial part about how we engage with our communities too, going in there with an open mind, an open heart. And I think knowledge and education about the history of the people there, I think history on the racism within the towns, I think it's something that's really important to know too, because cultural awareness to me, I deliver a cultural awareness program. It's a very generic package, so I deliver it in different states and different areas, but local knowledge has to come from local people, so I really rely heavily on going into a community with someone who's known, connected, has ties there and respected and trusted there. Because if I'm with someone who's like that, they're going to trust me a bit more too. Patience, I think, is something that government lack. I haven't got time to go out there and sit in the community for 3 hours or 3 days or 3 weeks. And I've seen for 23 years of work in the public service sector, not much has changed with our mob. Our stats have gone back in some areas. Youth suicide, we've got the worst on the planet, I think, at the moment. Our young men are dying at a high rate. Men's prison rates are still a national disgrace. Our women's have tripled in the last couple of years. Aboriginal kids in foster care has risen 200 to 300%. So when I look at my time in government, have we really changed things? So I think government need to change the way they do things, what they've done for 23 years, and maybe just change and innovation and try something new. If it ain't working, give something else a crack at it. So yeah, trust, respect, and build a bit of rapport too.
Thank you, Gabriel. So before I start talking, I have a question for the audience. So who out of you in the audience have at least one or maybe both your parents born overseas? So that's probably about a third of our room. I guess the biggest thing I really encourage engagement practitioners to think about is the actual data of who are residents. I work in New South Wales. In the 2016 census data, it showed that 50% of the people who live in New South Wales come from a culturally diverse background. And also in respect to people who come from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander backgrounds as well. So one of the things I've been finding most, I've had about 20 years of engagement as an engagement practitioner, and I remember 2 years ago when I applied for the job as Director of Community Engagement at Multicultural New South Wales, I approached the job thinking, okay, so preparing the interview, okay, if I was going to engage with the Chinese community, what would I do? I'd go to the Chinese media, I'd translate all my material, similar sorts of thoughts. But what my thinking has really evolved over the last 2 years around, as many of you would be aware through engagement practices, what are our unintended consequences? And something that has now really changed the way I think is that as I go around the state really promoting that engagement people think about engaging people from culturally diverse backgrounds, What I'm finding is people go, here's my engagement strategy. Oh yes, and then 10% of my spend is going to be on culturally diverse communities over here, and I might translate some of the material. So I'm actually really fascinated in terms of what we're doing there is creating a sense of other. So there's us, we speak English and we're going to get our engagement, and then there's another, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people or people born overseas. So I think the really big challenge for us is to start from that perspective of saying if 50% of the population have parents born overseas, if you're designing an infrastructure project, that's the majority of your audience. It's not the other. But I might stop there because I'll keep talking. So I think that maybe this sort of thing is the other example I give is my flatmate Maggie. She hates it when I do this, but I always use her as an example. She was born in China. She speaks 3 languages, Mandarin, Cantonese and English, better English than mine. If you were going to design an engagement process about her and you just thought about her as Chinese, you'd actually miss who she is. She's actually a highly educated woman in her 30s. There's an extraordinary business entrepreneur in Sydney. She's extraordinarily well connected in the Chinese business community in Sydney. So if you were going to reach her through your engagement, I'd encourage you to think a little bit about the fact that she is Chinese, because it does affect the way that she does business and it does affect her business network. But if you also didn't think about the fact that she's highly innovative, she's fully connected to social media, she thinks like someone born in, who's lived most of her life in inner city Sydney. So the other thing I'd encourage when we're talking about engaging with culturally diverse communities is it just comes, well, it doesn't just, it's not that easy. It's about thinking about your audience and thinking about your audience in terms of their socioeconomic status, their level of education, their age demographic, their place, where they were born, where they live, who their community is, and think about their cultural diversity. Don't bring their cultural diversity out in isolation and go, they're Chinese, I need to translate the material if I'm going to capture them.
So I guess my answers might be a bit different. So I'm a digital native. Growing up in my childhood, there was a computer room, and then I guess I never really left the computer room, just constantly online, which is awesome and awful. As in my bio, I run a Facebook group called Queer Housing Adelaide. There are actually groups like this all over the country, and it's like a very DIY way for young people, and not just young people, to find safe and affordable housing without having to deal with the possibility of having some super homophobic housemates and then suddenly finding yourself homeless, or having a bout of secondary homelessness, or going from kind of like bouts of like different variations of secondary homelessness, and that's for like a lot of different factors, from financial, mental health, really low paying jobs, junior rates of pay, casualisation of the workplace, I could go on. And that's very much from like what my experience was. So it's like a very grassroots way of trying to deal with that. And it's also done with zero funding, a lot of autonomy. I'm the person who has to deal with any conflict that comes up. But it's also given me a lot of insight into how diverse people's experiences are, and also trying to be this connector between seeing people who are talking about, and this is to strangers on the internet, where they're trying to crowdsource advice, where they have said, like an example, I'm a transgender woman in regional South Australia. I just came out to my wife, we're breaking up, I need to move, I don't know where to go, I don't know anyone in Adelaide. And they're going, okay, let's just see what we can find of what's out there. So trying to create links there. I'm also a community radio broadcaster at Radio Adelaide. It's like a mixture of traditional media in that, but also new media, podcasting, and also links to all kinds of social media. But also sort of outside of these bubbles, I do a lot of grassroots engagement stuff. And I guess we're kind of on the other side, I guess, because we people who aren't necessarily working for any kind of organisation. We don't have roles, we make them up. We see things happen and we try to respond to them, and in doing that we have to create partnerships between local councils, NGOs, businesses, community groups within our communities, and this produces events like the vigil for the Orlando nightclub shooting, protests. Some of the current projects that I'm working to is around the same-sex postal survey, where we're trying to focus on doing more so community care opposed to just protesting, because advocating for your rights all the time, because the personal is political, is exhausting. So more so we're focusing on like more fun stuff, like an art therapy day. We're trying to do a DIY version of the same-sex formal that Minus 18 normally puts on, which isn't happening this year for various reasons, but we felt it was important to keep the momentum up. So it's this other side, but there's a lot of parallels in the way that we work and the way that we get things to work and the way that we talk to each other. But we're doing a lot of organising and communicating online and like finding people via online, Twitter thread conversations, eventually turns out to be events. It's like, this is the beginning place of someone going, this is sad, what can I do? Someone's like, I'm also sad, I want to help you. And that's where it begins. Yeah, I think that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. You basically covered my next question, so that was great. I'll kind of marry up the two questions. So I guess the forum's about taking it to the next level. All of you in the room have probably dealt with these different communities at different times in some of your work. And some may feel like they've got it covered. So I guess what I'd really be interested in is like, what are your sort of top 3 tips on how to better engage with your communities? And particularly around some of the diverse consultations that are happening at the moment. Like I know in Sydney there's a lot around infrastructure, there's definitely a lot around affordable housing, and then I know local government are also making a great effort trying to get and always have kind of within their local community. So what would be the top tips in sort of, you can take any of those, but what would be your top tips on how to make that better or work better, or what are we missing, or where's the gap? So, you know, you mentioned the online, could we be doing more there, or are we doing enough?
Yeah, as far as the online stuff, I think probably everybody in the room that's attached to an organisation probably has some kind of online presence. And I think a lot of the way that people tend to think of like social media is like another form of marketing. So, but the way that I kind of think about it is relationship building, resource building, and trying to create a sense of transparency and trust. So I think some of the like stuff that hasn't been used enough online, but I'm starting to see is live video functions. So you think about Facebook, you can do Facebook Live, you can orchestrate your own Q&A, or I could run my own panel conversation with my housemates where I could tell everyone, hey, in 2 days' time I'm going to be speaking to these people, chime in with your questions. Like that's a brilliant low budget way of making stuff happen or getting people into the room. And I think it's always helpful if you make it specifically for online, whereas trying to record events as they're happening can be really difficult in that kind of setup. It's just like audio things. I'm an audio nerd, so that just really grinds my gears. But I think podcasting is also something that isn't being utilised enough at all. Videos are wonderful because there's like beautiful imagery, but you also need to capture people's attentions, and they need to be sitting there at the screen or sitting there on their phone watching. We're seeing more videos being produced specifically for Facebook, where they're coming out with captioning, so you can watch it on mute while you're at work, pretending you're doing something else. But podcasts are things that people do in their own time while they're commuting, while they're doing the dishes, while they're lying in bed, having a depresso spell where they don't feel like getting up that day. It's just things that people are accessing in their own times. And I think it's a way to sort of let people, I think particularly with like live events, so maybe with a big panel like this, podcasting would work really well as a way to record what happened in the room. And so people have an opportunity to catch up in a way, kind of the way that TV is sort of having shows broadcasted, and then you can revisit online, and then you can jump onto Twitter and be like, hey, that latest episode was really good. And then the conversation can continue for a while afterwards, so there's a bit of an echo effect. I think those are my main points.
Interesting to answer your question about top tips. I'm going to take a slightly different angle on that. I actually think everyone in this room probably has a fabulous toolkit of all the top tips, and we've done all the IAP training. I think the reason I've done this for 20 years now, it's a bit scary, is that I'm so passionate about the fact that as engagement professionals, I'm in this game because ultimately I want to bring about social change and I want to have impact. And I really want to draw on our colleague Kristen Gabriel's amazing presentation before about the way she framed the power of what Resilient City has done was about creating this extraordinary massive data and research that, because of the consultation she did do, has now so convincing. I'm so convinced that we will bring around the change that she and her partner wants to bring about. So my biggest top tip to this audience is remember the power we have. And I think we think a lot about how we can do our community engagement, but I really encourage us to get more passionate about how we can influence up to the top, because we need that top level buy-in to do what it is that we actually know that we can do. So in my area, I'm really passionate about the fact that I think, and you don't need to convince me, one of Australia's strongest strengths and what makes us such an amazing country is our diversity. We have some of the best, we will have better business leaders if we have people who speak multiple languages and know how to do business on a world stage. We will have better sports people. We will have better ballerinas because they've travelled all over the world. Australia is very good at talking about our cultural diversity in terms of, isn't it great, we have this really interesting food, and we have great restaurants, we do festivals, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I want to bring about amazing change where we embrace the power that the diversity is actually what's going to give our communities and our nation its edge. So to the point I made earlier about what I'm passionate about when people are thinking about major projects that are getting delivered on behalf of government, whether or not that's health change, whether or not that's building better infrastructure, this is what I'm sort of saying. Think about the diversity as core to what it is that you want to find out about, because you want to create that change. So my top tip is thinking about our ability to influence up and pitch the work that we do in the way that Kristen encourages to do, which is we're actually the research team. We're going to build the data. And when it comes to talking to those media advisors, talking from the questions that were asked of our first speaker, I've throughout my career always talked to the media team in terms of I am your risk strategy, and I will always talk to my media team because that's what they want to know about. They passionately want to keep their CEO out of the media, and so do I. And how am I going to work from a risk base to give them what it is they need? Because there's always that fracture between thinking we're on different paths, where actually we're all on the same path. So that's my first tip. My second tip just got out of my brain.
That's okay, because we've got lots of questions.
Okay, so Dave, I'm going to hand over to you and you can save me. Thanks.
I suppose dealing with our mob, is one thing I'll say is be patient. When government consult with our mob, it's a blow-in, blow-out process. A minister will blow into our community for a day, talk to about 20 people, and they're on a bus back to their town, ticking off a box of stuff that we consulted with the mob there. So I think spending a lot of time within our communities and being a genuine connecting time rather than just, don't be seen as a blow-in, blow-out organisation or a government body. Our mob call you the white cockatoos or the white clouds, eh? We're so used to seeing you fellas come and go. It's partly that, and one other fellow explained in a sense that, you come in cockatoos again, they come and drop a couple of nuggets in our community, then they're gone again. Here they come again, there they go again. And them nuggets are those funding programs. That's the money that continuously are spent and fail and continue to fail our mob. think about Aboriginal employment or input, when we look at the history of our country, we have never ever had an Aboriginal person to be the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, not once in the history of our country. So common sense tells me that when you're designing Aboriginal programs, who should have input? You don't have to be Albert Einstein to work this one out, eh? But in government, we don't have a lot of Albert Einsteins. No offence to my government fellas in radio. So it's just logic, it's common sense that if you're going to design Aboriginal programs, Aboriginal people should have input into it. And it's about trying to represent that wider community. Talking with 5 elders doesn't always capture the answers for our Mod 1. We have, I think, people that have knowledge and talent in our middle age range, not just our elders groups. We also have some good youth out there that have some great opportunities in education that I think can give a lot back to our Mod 2. So it's capturing the wider part of our audience and definitely having input and looking at opportunities. Can our Mod be a part of this? I think a lot of years I've seen a lot of non-Aboriginal organisations and bodies make a lot of money out of our people. I'd rather see Aboriginal people make money out of our people because that's where money belongs in our communities that we can put back into our communities for our own mob. Self-determination to me is really about our people having decision making. It's about our mob having control over those sort of things. But you look at our country historically, we haven't had a lot of input at that high level of government, policy writing or decision making. For most of our lives, it's often been government telling us what's best for us, how you should do things and how we need to spend money in that too. So having Aboriginal input I think is absolutely crucial. And I'd just say for me, if you've got a good heart and good intentions, our mob will open up the doors to you to come into our communities. Honesty is a real part of it. If anyone knows Kenya in New South Wales, there's something like 800 people that live in that community. Apparently there's 120 service providers that are going to that community. If anyone knows Kenya, nothing's changing out there. Shops are closing down, housing's still bad, youth suicide, drug and alcohol. What has that 120 government bodies provided to them people out there? Nothing. Because it's just that blow-in, blow-out process. So be genuine and spill your heart. Because I'm doing a project in North Kenya at the moment, and my first approach here was basically, I'll tell you straight out, I'm not here for the long haul. I'm here as a neutral provider, not a government body, just a government company and deliver a project around the National Disability Insurance Scheme. So I said I'm going to be a blow-in, blow-out blackfella for you fellas. But at least I was up front and I told them straight in their face rather than going in there making broken promises. Because that's part of that Waikaka too, is that government have come and promised a lot of things, but it hasn't been given out to us. So don't be seen as one of them blow-in, blow-out fellas. Come to our communities, work with us, but consult with us and properly consult. Don't just do the 3 or 4 people. Come spend some days there. I don't know if has anyone ever seen the Prime Minister of Canada? Good looking fella too, eh? But I seen a documentary thing on him on SBS or ABC, and he went out to a community with the First Nation mob in Canada. He actually spent, I don't know, a week or 2 weeks in that community, sitting on trucks delivering water to the community, sitting down talking to people individually. That to me is a consultation rather than a government body here in Australia that just blows in and blows out. So take time, be patient, have an open mind, have an open heart, and that'll work if you do it the right way. But patient consultation is a big part of it.
You've answered some of the questions I've got in the chat box, so that was good. I guess just an extension, and then I'll go to Megan and Shaylee because we've both got questions, and then I'll open to the floor. So you've answered about how better to engage with those communities. How do you get the funding? So you just mentioned that you went in to do a government program. Often funding is hard to get for some things or the type of engagement you want to do. How do you make any efforts there to try and get more funding for certain projects, or do you rely on somebody else to do that? How do you go about that? Because if government needs to do something, how do you get the funding for those programs?
My brown nose. That was probably one of my first best tips. You want to engage deadly with our mob, bring a lot of money. It's not best more than that, but yeah, I don't know. I know there's a lot of money out there, there's a lot of funding out there, there's opportunities for our mob left, right and centre. When I look at my Nan and Pop's history, I'm way better off than what they were. You know, my mum and dad's generation, our mob have great opportunities these days. So I think there's corporate bodies out there that are giving opportunities in funding. And it's just a matter of keeping our ears and eyes out on the ground about what's out there and what's available. So the project that we're doing with the National Disability Insurance Scheme at the moment is huge. There's a lot of money in that area. at the moment with the rollout of the NDIS. So that's just been through community networking, keeping our ears on the ground and finding out what's available. So yeah, if anyone got any money out there, I'll drop it out to the mob, you know, in wider Australia. So, and I know there's funding out there for these type of programs, but the fund for me, put that funding into Aboriginal people, put that funding into Aboriginal communities. We you know, it's not without trying to be offensive. We're sick of non-Aboriginal people being paid lots and lots of money and making lots of money out of things that they don't do and don't do really well. History and experience have told me that it hasn't worked a lot, and if our stats are going backwards, logic tells me there's something wrong. Something needs to change. My mum said to me once, we as Aboriginal people, we can walk in two worlds. We walk in our Aboriginal world, and we have to work in the world that surrounds us now, the white fellas world. But white Australia often struggle to walk in our world. But we want you to come there, we want you to be a part of that. So bring your money.
Megan, this one's for you. What techniques have you used to engage ESL communities who aren't used to being asked what they think about government decisions or having an avenue to raise issues and complain? How do you get them to participate?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm actually going to go back to the introduction today, which really resonated for me, was when they did that framework around seeing things from your worldview, seeing things from others' worldview, and then having a shared worldview. So I think the principles I would advocate, I do have a team in Multicultural New South Wales that sits within my division, which is our community resilience team, and we have a community engagement team. So the community resilience team is the team that we use to do much more specialised in-depth engagement on communities who are under, a lot of pressure. Whereas community engagement team, we do just a lot more of the broader community with all of the diverse communities in New South Wales. And so we've been doing a lot of community engagement with a lot of our Muslim community leaders in Sydney, both Shia and Sunni, and a range of different Muslim religious faiths that are represented in New South Wales. And as a community, they're obviously under a lot of stress and impact at the moment. But I really believe that the principles that we talk about generally with engagement are still the principles, which is I think that you have to approach your engagement with curiosity and a really genuine open heart, and not with presumptions that you think you already know what you're going to find when you start to open up those doors. And I think interestingly, David, some of the concepts you were talking about with Aboriginal people in terms of there's so much research now out there as an industry about history of engagement with Aboriginal people, where in some ways it's this over-consultation and then just leaving, and then over-consultation and then leaving in some ways, or not enough consultation. I think I'm really starting to see that a lot with Sydney's Muslim community as well, or New South Wales, in the sense that they're under a lot of pressure, and you'll build very tentative links with government, but as soon as something hits with the media, where does that fallout really fall? And who are the people at the end of the day that still have to go home and live these 24 hours? Who are my team members who wear hijabs and still come to work and have to deal with what they deal with on public transport? Yeah, sure, I can talk about this stuff till the cows come home, but do I really know what it's like to be a young woman and feeling really threatened on a train? So it's back to those principles that we've been talking about, the IAP2 principles. It's respect, it's also courage, but I think it has to come from a genuine sense of curiosity. And I keep going back to this other sense of what I've really learned most about in the 2 years I've been doing this job is I've started to realise we have more in common than we actually separate us. And there's this beautiful, there's a great ad that's done by the CommBank, and this is a comms example, but the principle I want to promote will translate to engagement. And as I said, I've now had sort of 2 years of sort of talking about how you do targeted campaigns, but meeting with the CommBank marketing manager, there's this campaign, right? It's an ad, and obviously the CommBank have decided that the Chinese community in Sydney, big dollars, they've got a whole team now set up to connecting with the Chinese business community. But this ad is beautiful. This ad is this small family, and they're going through the different parts of their life, and the baby's born, and they're looking for finance when the baby's born to buy the first car, and then the kids at school, and then the kids at university. That's the ad. but it's got a Chinese family in it. But the beautiful message in that ad is that we're all the same, and when it comes to finance, we all need, as our families grow, access to finance. Now, the reason I use that example is they didn't go out and say we need a Chinese advert. They actually focused on the themes that brought us together rather than the things that made them different. And so as I said, it's only in the last couple of months I've started changing what I tell people is when you're thinking about your engagement processes, start with the things that we all have in common, whether or not you're from the Muslim community, whether you're from the Hindu or the Sikh beliefs. Sure, there's lots of things that separate us, but probably go back to where do they do their local grocery shopping, who's their local teacher, what do they do on the weekend, maybe they go to a mosque or maybe they go to the local church group. So going back to the themes of as people who are connected by a community, find out who their community is and then find out what are the things that motivate them.
Shaylee, this one's for you. What is secondary homelessness? Can you explain that a bit more?
So secondary homelessness is it's more about being in a place of like unstable housing. You're not necessarily sleeping rough on the streets. You're not necessarily visible in that way. But maybe you've been camping on your friend's couch for the past month or so. You may not be able to pay rent at that point in time because perhaps you've got all your stuff in somebody else's shed, or maybe you're paying for storage and you can only just afford to pay for storage and not. So it's just sort of like this in-between space where you're sort of at risk of your circumstances intensifying, so where you may end up being a person sleeping rough on the streets, or you may be able to get into the rental market somehow. It's just this unstable kind of stage. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Okay, now we open to the floor if there are any questions, if anyone wants to ask. Ooh. No? Gee, you might have answered. Oh, great.
Hi, Sam from Chatterbox Projects. I've got a couple of statements, but I've also got questions. With the current postal plebiscite asking 16 million people whether a small minority group in Australia can get married, I would like to ask the panel members about what your communities think of this biggest survey in community engagement, and how your communities feel that if there was a question about your community as a human right having access.
I know from my community, Aboriginal community, when we have gay, lesbian, transgender mob in our community, they're not looked down upon, they never have been. I think they're embraced and in some way celebrated in some way too. I personally don't get all this stuff. Why a government has to make a decision why people can get married or why they can't. I think it's stupid. I feel like throwing people fish when they clap me. But I just think everyone has a right to it. It's in my family, it's in my backyard. I don't get it, to be honest, but I know our communities don't look down upon it. We never have, from my experience, and we never shone people out to say we see you as someone who's different, we don't want you in our community and see you later. I think that's something about Aboriginal culture that I'm very proud of, how we embrace difference, how we, I think we celebrate difference in some ways too. So I personally have a son who's come out about his stuff, and I think he was scared a bit when he came out to tell me. Didn't bother me. I said, mate, you're my kid. I don't care who your partner is and what you do in your life, but the fear that I had for me personally was I'll accept that and I'll celebrate that and I'll embrace that, but I'm worried about how society judges him and it worries me as a dad, how that's going to affect him. But I know I'll kick their guts if they do it with my boy. So yeah, I think it's good. I think it's a good discussion at the moment going on out there, but I think people are making their decisions and values based on, I think, their religious values. And I think it's wrong. I think people have a right to do what they have. If you love someone, you love someone. Simple as that.
Oh my God, there's so many elements to that question. I think, Multicultural New South Wales, we promote and support diversity of all kinds. So I'll definitely start with that very strong strong comment on behalf of my agency. Diversity is what we celebrate and we promote all forms of diversity. I think interestingly, before the marriage equality debate came up, I actually had a team that's been working very closely with an academic around the rise of online hate speech. We were actually doing that project in the terms of online racial hate speech, and I think as engagement practitioners I would encourage us to start thinking about, as we think about online engagement forums, the rise of online hate speech is something that is an emerging challenge for us. To give you an example, we have a Multicultural New South Wales Facebook page that we only launched about 7 months ago, and it's been extraordinarily successful. We've been growing by 1,000 follows every month, so if you don't check us out, please like us now. We have an amazing social media team. But some of the commentary I get on that Facebook page, I'm actually telling you the truth when I say I actually send that across to the Bias Crimes Unit at the New South Wales Police, because the stuff we get is so ugly. And I must admit, before I started this job and I had to deal with those Facebook comments on a daily basis, and I started working with academics, I don't think you probably could have ever have convinced me until I've experienced it firsthand how ugly the online space has become. So I have rambled a bit to your question, but I think it has been interesting, obviously, with the plebiscite in terms of the level of hate speech that's been projected in the online stuff. I think is just frankly incredibly concerning, and I just don't know what we do about it. Well, we've started a campaign at Multicultural New South Wales, which is called Remove Hate from the Debate. And it actually started from a place of us being concerned about... our campaign actually started in the design stage 1.5 years ago. And it started from this place where we said, as the New South Wales government, when it comes to issues of religious or cultural diversity, there are difficult issues we need to talk about as a society. We were saying we actually encourage people to have these conversations. Sure, if you want to ask the question, which I disagree with, but if you want to ask the question, does an increase in immigration levels lead to an increase in terrorism? I'm okay with that conversation. We need to talk about those things, and I want to talk about those things, but let's not do it in a hateful way. So that led to us working with some academics, and led to us now coming up with this campaign, Remove Hate from the Debate. So let's have the debate, let's not do it in a hateful way, and over the next 2 years we're going to be rolling that out in a range of different ways. But I think the timing was also good with the marriage equality debate, in terms of it's a similar thing about having a debate, but it's just so concerning when it becomes as hateful as it's become.
Can I just add to that? I think as community engagement specialists, all of us in the room, we often don't have inclusive questions in any of our surveys to get people to identify as Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander, GLBTI, or from multicultural background, and a lot of that information is very important in terms of planning. You know, if you ask a safety question, you actually want to know a little bit more about why particular people are not feeling safe, and if you know, possibly their background. I think we need, as practitioners, to continue to educate the community by asking more demographic data about how people identify, because that can actually influence what the actions will be in the future. So I think it's really important that we continue to, when it's appropriate, it's not always appropriate to get people to identify, but there's many questions in our community engagement where it's important to know why people aren't feeling safe, or why some issues are arising, why they're homeless. I just think it's really important. With working with some councils will not ask any questions about people, how they identify, and I think they're really losing out on some really detailed information to help them in their planning process.
I just wanted to comment quickly on that comment. Yeah, that's a really key point that I think it's like a sense of, queer literacy. My pet hate is surveys where it's like, what is your gender? Male, female, transgender. Like, what does that actually mean if you're a transgender woman? Like, what box do you pick? Like, well, I'm a woman, but they seem to think that transgender is a gender, and not like, it's like a way of describing not being cisgender, which is not identifying with the gender that you were assigned at birth. And there's kind of like, if you're thinking in like a non-online context, if you're doing a event like this, it's even like small things like thinking about like accessible bathrooms. Bathrooms is a massive worry for the queer community, there's an app that helps you find bathrooms that you can go to if you don't feel safe going to the men's room or the women's room, like to an accessible one. So just having safe spaces set up like that, or even just for like that sort of first contact kind of thing, like whether someone's getting an inquiry on the phone and it's a deep voice talking to them and they're using sir and he, him, and they're like, oh, actually, my name's Sarah, could you not? And that not being a massive like incidents like that, these little microaggressions can just completely cut people off from wanting to engage, because so often trans people are basically being their own advocates. They're about 20 years at least behind the rest of the queer movement, and so much of their interaction with like health providers is just being the educators, and so sort of getting the people they're trying to seek help from up to speed. And I feel like maybe a lot of the people in this room might be on board and like a bit more aware, but sort of further out, maybe other colleagues who aren't here might not be in the loop. So there needs to be like more cohesive cultural educating, I guess. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I think that we as a sector, as practitioners, probably get diversity and inclusion as much as any group in the country. And I just wonder if today might be an opportunity for us to make a combined statement that we stand for people of all ethnicities, of all cultures, of all sexual orientation, that we support and value everybody, and that we would commit to taking that message back to all the groups that we work with, to all our leaders, and to publishing it together.
I'm going to close if there are questions. There might have been some that I did miss on the chat, but I'll check in if we could get them answered at a later point, because they were. But I think the panel did a great job of answering what you were all thinking. Thank you very much for your time. I want to apologise to who was it? John Holland. Sorry, I needed to say at the start. Thank you very much for supporting this session. Really appreciate the support. And now we're moving into lunch, and we're moving into lunch. So those of you that want to go to the lunch and learn session with Michelle Weston, it'll be starting in 10 minutes in the carousel room. So grab your lunch and take it with you. The venue will be breaking into this space into 3 rooms for our afternoon session, and we'll place the session details on the door of each room. And I also encourage you to meet our wonderful forum partners, sponsors and panel session members, and say hello over lunch. Thank you very much.